Hi, thank you so much for joining us today at Event Pros Let's Talk. I am so excited to have Christina Renee here with us from Voila Events Solutions. She is an amazing event industry professional, and she has done so much things within our event industry for other companies within the event industry, as far as providing event solutions and production help and support for sales and management consulting. Yeah. So she has done some awesome things, and I really wanted her to be here with us to share her knowledge and her experience of what she's been doing within the event industry and how we can all benefit from it as event professionals.
Yep. I'm all about it.
Thank you so much for joining us, Christina.
I'm super psyched to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about you. For those who don't know you, I know you plenty.
Sure,
so
I know.
I want to make sure that everybody else gets to know.
Sure.
What you do.
So a little bit about me, and I think this tends to be kind of true about a lot of event planners. We kind of end up being event planners, right? So we didn't exactly go to school to study it or had planned on being here, but something about our passion and our talent kind of found a good crossroads in the events world, and that's kind of what happened to me. So in college, I was pre-law and planning on going to law school, and eventually found myself working for a DMC, and then eventually just full-fledged jumping in both feet into the events industry. So my career honestly has spanned across quite a bit of different industries within the events world. So anywhere from like nightlife to destination management to weddings to hotels and hospitality, I've kind of done it all. And I think that's kind of what makes me uniquely positioned to be able to help different people within the industry for sure. Yeah.
So how did you so what made you go into from where you started to now where you are?
Working for myself, sure. So again, I think that owning my own company was something that I saw, but in the very, very distant future. But as I got better at my job and I got better at sales and I saw the numbers go up in a lot of the hotels that I was doing sales for, and I always had, that operational logistics eye. So in addition to selling event space, I always used to make sure from an execution standpoint that my client would always come back. And what made that possible was once the contract was signed, the operations team was there and was able to then deliver on the promise that I had made the client. And so I became very well versed on the operations side. But eventually, the thing that happens to most people that work really hard, you make a lot of money for other people.
Right.
And then you look at your check and you're like, wait. This doesn't add up.
Right.
Like, I know that my skill set could mean a lot more from a financial standpoint. And that's kind of how, I ended up quitting my job without a game plan. At my last job, I didn't have another job lined up. I didn't have a game plan to work for myself. I just said, you know what? I'll figure it out. And so after freelancing for a few clients, and almost being embarrassed that they had to write a check to Christina Renee versus like a company name, I was like, okay, maybe I should LLC. And the LLC then took on the form of, I need an assistant. And then that took on the form of, I need processes, I need strategy and structure. And so that's kind of where I'm at today. That's how I got here.
So tell us about Voila, and what does Voila, the structure of Voila, and what does Voila provide to the event industry?
Yeah, totally. So Voila is uniquely positioned, I would say, where we're a little bit different from the other hospitality consulting firms. We do production, and we provide production support, and we also provide hospitality consulting for event businesses. The reason we're able to do that and sort of have both sides benefit is that I always believed in a dual economy system where there's a vendor and a client, but in any of those situations, the titles can get flipped very easily. And so having worked both as client and as vendor, I'm able to really understand what event planners are looking for in terms of like looking for space and looking for vendors. And being a production and designer for events and having worked in event space, I also know from an event space perspective how they go about finding the right clients for them to be able to populate their space with the right clientele, meet their revenue goals for the month, and sort of operate their venues properly. So my approach is always looking at both sides, the client and whatever vendor or venue is servicing that client, and vice versa.
Okay, so I remember we were talking about, a couple of topics that we wanted to discuss, and I was so excited about them. So you just jump right in.
Yeah, totally. So the first topic I would say that is super beneficial is anyone who is either looking to start an event business, a business in general, or already in it and kind of like want to make sure they're not reinventing the wheel or that they're kind of following the right road for their business, is really understanding why businesses fail. And it's not a cautionary tale necessarily, but it's really important to know, almost like a habit, as a business owner, there are certain cues that you have to be used to seeing. And upon receiving those cues, you then have a behavioral strategy that you know to implement at that moment. And that's really key for being a business owner and a freelancer. You have to have habits. Things have to be sort of habitual, right? And that kind of comes with discipline and experience. But I would say that, you know, looking at why businesses fail is a great way for you to sort of create strategies for yourself and really do a gut check every now and again. Like, where am I? Am I meeting my goals? If not, why? So I'd probably say, yes, there are a million reasons why businesses may fail, but specifically there are 5 that I think are really beneficial for people that are in the events industry. Right. The first one is failure of leadership or culture, right? It doesn't mean that you're a bad boss. It doesn't mean that you don't know how to delegate to a team. There are ways and things that you can do to get better at that. What it means is, you know, in a lot of event companies, the clients came first, right? Your desire to do events came, and then you started talking to family members, you started planning bridal showers and weddings here and there, so the clients kind of came first, which is a great thing. But what you want to make sure is you don't want to skip the step of really creating that base for your business, which is, who are you? Right. What's your why?
I think a lot of
you can't skip that.
Yeah, you can't skip that, and
you can't skip that.
And I think if you don't create that base, I know if you don't create that base, the failure rate just skyrockets.
That's correct. So, and that bleeds into the other reasons, mind you. So knowing what your culture is, one, allows you to hire better personnel once your team starts to grow. And whether that's full-time or freelance, it doesn't matter, right? So, because you can be a small agency where you decide, you know what, I'm only going to have a handful of full-time employees, but the bulk of my staff will be freelance. That's fine. And that's actually even harder because your culture has to seep into their day-to-day, even when they're not physically with you, right? So that culture is really helpful. And second, culture is helpful for the second reason why businesses fail. They don't really put their clients first, right? A lot of businesses think, well, I created this concept. I think I'm awesome. I think I have this skill set, right, that I can offer people. And that's the value I'm going to place on the service or the product that I'm selling versus, am I really solving a problem for the ideal demographic that I want to work with?
Who your market is.
Who your market is.
You don't even know who your market is, and you're starting to create something that you don't even know who you're shopping it to.
That's correct.
So
that's correct. So it's great, again, if you have business coming to you when you first start and you've got the family members who are supporting you and sending business your way, obviously you're going to want to take those because it's cash, right? And it's business that's going to help you build your skill set. But you really want to think about, after a while, well, what kind of business do I want to go after? This is the stuff that's falling in my lap, which is great. But where do I want to spend my marketing dollars from there? And what kind of audience do I want to target? So I would say that's the second reason businesses fail. And the third one, which kind of goes along with that, is financial management. Like, it's okay for us to be boutique and to be small and to be small agencies, but if we're looking to scale and sustain and really see an increase in revenue year over year, you have to get a professional to help you with that. And I don't mean an accountant, right? Like, most accountants will file your taxes, right? Whether it's quarterly or yearly, but they're not really going to help you make sense of your numbers. Like, I see that you're spending a lot of money in entertainment. Talk to me a little bit more about
why you're doing that.
Here are different things and ways that you can do that without increasing your costs and still being able to say, write them off at the end of the year when you do your taxes. So it's important to have some sort of financial consultant that can sit with you, maybe yearly, maybe quarterly. It doesn't have to be all the time. But again, if finances was your forte, you wouldn't have gone into business, into the events industry. And there are a lot of finance people turned event planners. You shouldn't be doing that stuff for yourself. You really should have an objective person really take a look at your numbers and kind of explain your business in that sense so that you can be better equipped to make financial decisions.
And that's going to be like a huge, you know, besides just knowing who your culture, that's one thing. I think the financial breakdown is super important because that's what makes or breaks your business. If you're not making the proper money or you're spending over, you know, what you need to be spending over a period of time, it's gonna catch up with you in the long run.
It will, and I think sometimes when we think finances, we think overspending. But there's another problem which is just as bad, and it's the other extreme. People who are afraid to spend money in marketing or afraid
or
to
don't know how to spend or where to spend it.
They don't know who to hire. They don't know, okay, well, what's reasonable in terms of what I would charge or what I would pay someone to do my social media.
What do you think is like some of the best marketing tools that you can use within the event industry?
I would say just in any industry, using your own resources, right? So like, what is it that you do that you think would be worth talking to the world about or talking to your industry about? And in what channel can you communicate that content that's not going to cost you a lot of money? Social media is one of them. It's free, right?
Right.
And so we really, as entrepreneurs and business owners and freelancers, have to almost be experts in every department, a little bit of finance, a little bit of HR, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, but in each of those departments figuring, well, what can I do with my existing resources to optimize my opportunities to bring in more revenue, to generate more leads.
This is why I love Christina, because she comes with a whole different perspective, which is the business side of event management. It's not just the pretty, it's not, you know, we all have the talent, we have the, you know, the drive, we have the passion.
Sure, that's what we're
want,
doing.
exactly, but, you know, building the business from the ground up as, you know, you're first starting in the industry, you don't really know what to do. And these are really key components that will make or break your business, you know, going forward as an event industry professional, no matter whether you're a photographer, whether you're a florist, whether, you know, you're a planner.
That's right.
Building those, you know, that foundation from day one. When you say, I want to take the next step to make my talent or to turn my talent into a business, you know, format or platform, you need these key things.
That's right. And the fundamentals are the same. It doesn't matter if you're a lighting AV company, a florist, or a production company. The fundamentals are the same. And again, you know, I think if you're going to be in a business of taking money from people, regardless of if you decide to scale in the future and become, you know, an agency of 500 people or a small agency of like 3 full-time, 2 full-time, 1 full-time person, freelancers, those fundamentals are really necessary. It doesn't matter. If you're gonna take money from people, there's an expectation that your clients will have. And in order to really keep the respect in the industry and with your clients, you have to be able to not just deliver on those promises, but have consistency. People have to know what to expect when they come to you. You know?
What other marketing tools would you say would, besides social media?
So there's a couple of, like, I would say lead automation tools online that are not free, a little bit more expensive, but certainly worth it. It's a matter of knowing how to use them the right way. I think people need to do better at taking advantage of their contact lists and then from there creating what I call lookalike audiences. So it's almost taking what your ideal client has been, so it can't be a client that you've never had. It has to be someone that you've worked with and you're able to dissect that client. How did they hear about you? How did they find you? What do they do? How do they make decisions around hiring a vendor like you? And then once you have that information, you're able to then find like 5 others like them, 10 others like them, 15 others like them. So I would say any marketing tool that allows you to dissect your current most favorite client and then using whether it's LinkedIn Sales Navigator or wherever to go find similar clients just like that is a really helpful marketing tool. So LinkedIn actually is a really helpful marketing tool.
I love LinkedIn.
Yeah. It's great for stalking. Listen, it's great for stalking. So,
no, it is.
So yeah. So, and I would say probably the last 2 reasons why businesses fail would be, honestly, expansion. Like people who expand, or companies who expand too fast or too slow, right? Because again, the problem can happen on the reverse. It is detrimental to your business. So, and this is where the financial consultant comes in handy. You don't want to get a financial consultant when you actually need one, right? You want to kind of prepare your finances ahead of time, so that when you do. And every business hits a wall. Every business has a bump that they have to get through, whether it's slow season or you lost an employee in the middle of a big deal, in the middle of a big project. Those things happen. So having that financial structure there beforehand is really helpful. And also a financial advisor can help you figure out how to grow your company, whether it's, hey, you're growing too fast, or hey, you're having trouble now, you're spread too thin and you're not able to execute your client contracts. And then the last reason I would say is really just not having a clear vision. Like there's a lot of, I think, fluff around marketing where you have companies that say, I'm gonna help you work on your brand packet or on your brand guide. So you're gonna have your mission, your vision, your core values, that stuff's really important. It's not fluff, it's really important. And really being clear about what those things are and putting them on paper and sticking to them. Now listen, visions can change. And that's a good thing, but your mission shouldn't change.
Right.
Your mission is who you are today and how you plan on servicing your clients today and why you're different from your competitors today. Your vision is where you see your company 5, 10, 15 years from now, and that could change, and that's okay. But if it does change, you want to make sure that your team is obviously current as to where you think this company is going to go, and your strategy supports that change.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So the other topic what we wanted to discuss was
aligning your brand with your clients.
Your clients. I love that one because that's also super important on the business side. So aligning your brand with your clients. So tell us about that.
So this is a phenomenal rule that I think really saved me in the very early ages of my career, and it's not specific to event planning entrepreneurs or business owners. It's really specific to anybody. Anybody, freelancer, business owner, entrepreneur, whatever you do. Okay, you have to be clear about what your core values are. That way, whoever you work with, whether it's an employee that you hired or a client that you've decided to take on, is aligned with that core value. Because if it's not, you will feel it.
Yes, you will.
And sometimes we have to take events and we have to take on clients where our core values don't align. But then again, this is where I talk about habit. There has to be a cue. Your cue is this client aligns, my behavior is X. Or your cue is this client does not align, therefore my behavior will be Y. It's separate but equal. X is not better than Y, right? You're not supposed to treat the clients that aren't in alignment with you badly because they're still paying you, right? There's still a contract, there's still a service that you have to execute. But your behavior should be different in that, are you trying to change that client so that their value matches yours, or is it a short-lived contract? You have a very specific thing you need to do and it's gonna end by a certain date, which makes it a little bit more bearable.
It makes it easier for you to, follow and how to really assess your client and assist your client, because that's very important. Because if you know that your client that particular client does not align, and I speak about that all the time. Not every client is going to be your client. Not every client is going to match up with your brand. Not every client is going to match up with your your company culture, and that's okay. And that's fine. You just have to be able to to know how to handle those situations and how to move forward as far as aligning your brand with the clients that you're going to be accepting to work with, because that's your reputation.
Right. It doesn't always mean you don't take the client. It just means that's not a client you're going to go after. And if they do come to you,
how do you handle it?
How do you handle it?
Exactly.
For sure. I think that's really important.
So some tips, like how do you deal with certain situations? Like, for example, a client does call and say, hey, I want to do this, particular service or whatever. Do you provide, can you provide this service? I want to do an event, anything that's going on within the solution world. And so as planners or as anyone within the event industry who's, working with a client, and now you have this client that does not particularly line up with your brand, how do you, what are some suggestions that you can give on that?
So the first and foremost thing is that client still has their version of what success looks like, right? And whatever their goals are. So in order for me to really know that there is no alignment, I have to understand what their goals are and what their values are. So the consultation around a client who I know may not be the right fit is centered around them. And really, it's always all about them. But the way I listen is different from the way I listen to a client who is already in alignment with me. If a client I feel like may not be in alignment, the questions I'm asking are slightly different, right? So first I want to know, well, how do you define success? Because it's certainly going to be different from how I define it, right? And it's not about me. So if I'm going to take the client on, I need to make sure that whatever we do,
it's about them.
It's about how they view success. Because at the end of the day, I want them to say I did a good job. And so, and the second questions are mostly, okay, well, what have you currently done that's been a roadblock in getting to that vision of success for you? Because if there are things you've already tried and haven't worked, there's no need for me to reinvent the wheel, right? And so sometimes after a consultation, after I've exhausted all those questions, I realize I'm actually not the right vendor for them. There's really nothing I can do. They've tried most of what I would have thought to do and none of it worked. So in those cases, after a consultation like that, I'm able to even at that consultation say, you know what, I don't think it's the right fit. Now here's one thing that I advise that everybody does. When you say no to a client, find someone else to refer
a solution
to them.
Yes, give them a solution to turn to. It really brands your, who you are as a professional, and it speaks volumes to say, about your expertise. To say, okay, well, I can't do this, but here's someone who can.
That's right.
And so that person in itself, also, as far as growing your network, that person, if they themselves can't handle something, they'll think of you because you referred that client, or clients to them. And so it really, it really goes both ways. Is very, very important.
I would agree.
And that's, we spoke about, just keeping a network of event professionals that speaks to the way that you work and, you know, your company culture, and just having a resource of information that can speak to clients that you probably can't reach or handle.
That's right. And we talked about brand alignment. This is where it's also important. So you go to networking events all the time. You're probably part of associations. When you do that, right, it's important not to shy away from your competitors. And I do this because I don't actually believe in competitors.
I don't either. I'm very big on that.
And if we did, we wouldn't be talking to each other.
Because we provide the same service within an angle, and then we're so different, though.
But we're so different.
Yeah.
And the reason we were able to identify our differences was because we were able to bond over our similarities.
Right.
And then have a conversation about, well, what don't you do?
Right.
Oh, I do that.
Okay, so you don't?
Exactly. And now, having known Carline and having worked with Carline, I can tell you that our work ethic is very similar.
Yeah.
Our values are very similar, if not almost identical. So I'm very comfortable, which I've done before.
Right.
You know, weddings is not entirely my thing. I usually will pick and choose, you know, who I plan weddings for.
Weddings is my thing.
But that's the thing. So if someone comes to me for a wedding, and it's a stranger, and I don't really feel comfortable maybe doing the entire wedding alone, I'll hand it over to Carline, and I'll do it with my eyes closed, knowing that whatever my process would have been and however I would have serviced that client, that's exactly what Carline's going to do.
And I do vice versa. So when I get things that I'm like, this is not for me, I call Christina. Christina, there you go, and good luck with all that.
You know, and you want to check in on your client, you know, and it's not to say that you don't, again, trust the person that you've sent it to, but you don't want the client to feel that you handed them over and then walked away, right? So you want to kind of check in. How's the process going? Carline's told me that everything's amazing. Mention the person you referred the business to, because it sounds like you've been talking, which you should be. And yeah, I kind of think that brand alignment, obviously in this situation, is really helpful because you know who you're referring your business to.
Let's talk about like building a network. What are some takes, or what have you done within the event industry that you feel has been like a really great resource for building your network?
I will tell you my secret. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
This is the best part, right? Now, I'm going to tell you the secret and you're like, but I don't want to do that. That's the hardest part, is that it's doing it. I'm not going to tell you something you don't already know, but you actually have to do it.
Right.
The secret to building your network is to give.
I'm sorry.
It's to give. Give. When you meet someone, your initial disposition should be, how can I help this person?
I think that is super important. Right.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Can you hire me as an event planner? That will come later. That will come later.
Yep.
You have to build the trust first. So your first initial thing when you meet someone, and again, you know, we're selfish human beings, right? I would say as New Yorkers and as human beings, we tend to be a little bit self-centered. So this doesn't come naturally. Right. It comes with practice. And it's a little annoying sometimes because you might go to a networking event and you meet someone who's super loud and obnoxious, and the last thing you want to think about is, how do I help you? However, if it's someone that you really want to work with in the future, you're going to have to just grin and bear it. Grin and bear it.
It's super, like that's another thing. I'm so into networking because I feel like that has been a great resource for me. And building my brand, building my company, taking my company to the next level, because you know the people that you surround yourself with is going to be super important to your growth. And people trust you. And people trust you, right? And it's not just, and how do you build that? That's a whole nother thing, because you know, it's not just you go to networking events, you attend them, you give out your business cards. It's how do you build those relationships going forward, and you know, really be, you know, creating friendships that will last the lifetime. You know, of your, not only your business, but you know, just in general.
Seth Godin said it best. Don't go to a networking event and just collect cards, right? Or I'm gonna try to meet as many people as I can. You're not going to be able to make worthwhile connections with that many people in one night, unfortunately. So you kind of have to have a game plan before you get to the party. Who do you want to meet? Do you know who's coming to the party? Do you have a guest list?
Do your research.
Do you have an idea
ahead of time.
Maybe you don't know who's coming, but based on the kind of party it is, you have an idea of the kind of people that are going to be in the room. Make a game plan for yourself. Pick 2 or 3 people that you want to meet. 2 or 3. That's it. In a matter of 3 hours. If you end up meeting more, great. But you really won't be able to have long-lasting conversations with more than 2 or 3 people. And I would also say follow up. You can't leave that party, take their card, and like
disappear.
Next event. That's not a thing. So that time you just spent at the party, wasted.
I agree. Well, I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add, or maybe, you know, some advice that you would like to give event professional. I always end with that because I feel like that's so important, you know, because we have, you know, this platform is built mostly, you know, with emerging event professionals in mind, so that way we learn from each other and provide that support. So what would you,
the one thing I would say, and this comes from the heart, because this is a problem that I definitely encountered as I was sort of coming up and going through the industry, no one solution will ever work for you. Okay, so know that someone might give you advice on how to handle a particular problem and it doesn't quite work for you. Well, that's okay. I think that when someone asks me, how do you stay organized or manage your time? You can get a bunch of articles online and a bunch of checklists on how to do time management effectively, but your particular solution is going to be a combination of those things. So be very open, do your research, and that's something that at Voila, we definitely are dedicated to. We give workshops throughout the year on different subject matters, and those workshops are always about, let me teach you how to physically do the one thing a bunch of different ways. That way when you go back to your day-to-day and you go back to running your life, you're able to pick and choose out of those habits that work best for you in your life and implement them into your business, and then you'll start to see positive results.
Well, thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy. Yeah, it was. So thank you guys so much for joining us on Event Pros Let's Talk. I hope everything Christina has shared with us today really adds value to, you know, building your brand, aligning your brand, and marketing, and all that great stuff that we discussed today. And if I'm so looking forward to seeing you guys next time, and see you later.
Thank you guys.